Week we were introduced to the rivalry between Abner. This week we're going to finish it off. So Abner doesn't last very long in the story. We're going to see Abner be not a very good guy. We're going to see Joab be a worse guy. So that's kind of my introduction. So let's go ahead and open in prayer, and then we'll dig into the lesson. Let's see. Let me want to open in prayer for us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Lord God, thank you for today. Thank you for fellowship. Thank you for your word. Allow us to learn and grow in your word and apply it to our lives. So it's Mr. Kelly teaches. Amen.
Amen. Okay, let's get started. So we're going to start in 2 Samuel chapter 3, verse 1. Who would like to read? Jana, go ahead. Start seeing that David's army grows stronger here. We have a few people that have been here since the beginning when we started this, so let's talk about this. Who is David, and who's David? So he's the son of Jesse. He's from the tribe of Judah. Israel. Seven years, because for about the first 5.5 between David's army and Israel. Years of David as a king, and David didn't recognize Ishbosheth as a more legitimate. Not an actual war and fighting, although there probably were some conflicts, like as we think about in war. Waging battles every day is probably more. So saying, well, David's not really as king, not Ishbosheth. His position is growing stronger. People are starting. David actually probably should be king over to recognize. On here, actual real war. Kind of the story. So we're getting to the closer to the reign at this point. We're not quite there yet. We're going to come to that soon in the story. Ishbosheth's reign ends. So that I plan on having kids in the future, a list of names for you. Number 2 here, David has a bunch of sons here. Now, tell me some things you notice about this list of sons. They all have different moms. What does that tell you? Different wives. Now, this is not an example. This is, oh, by the way, hand out the candy. You can take one and pass one back to Jana because she gets one too. Sorry about that. But this is not the example that we're setting as the norm, okay? This is not what God's saying is this is a good thing. Now, David's a man after God's own heart, but this is not one of the ways that he is, okay? So, as you see this, you didn't go, oh, David did that. He was pretty much a good, that's probably, maybe I should go out and find more wives here. No, that's not what we're saying, okay? This is one of the areas where David didn't do what was right. So 6 sons are listed. So David had at least 6 wives by this point. This is not good. This causes problems. In fact, tell me about some of these sons. There's a couple of them you might recognize here. Okay, what's Absalom's deal? Yeah, he has a problem because he has a sister later, and what happens to his sister? By? Yeah, one of her brothers rapes her, and Absalom ends up killing him. And then, after David's sin, Absalom takes over the kingdom from his father and tries to kill his father. So, there's problems that happen, partially because of this situation that David has with his many wives. So, I'm guessing that if David had one wife and many kids, that some of these problems wouldn't be happening. David brings problems into his family because of this marriage situation. So this is not necessarily a good thing that's listing here, that David is taking on all these wives. So this is not an example to follow here. This is just, the Bible is telling us this is what David's life was like. It's just giving us a truthful look at what's going on in David's life. And then if you think, well, you're just saying that, Sean, let's fast forward to Solomon, and you go to 1 Kings 11. Solomon's the wisest guy in the world, and 1 Kings 11 starts out with, but Solomon had many wives, and his wives did what? Turned his heart away from God and follow idols. And part of Solomon's problem had all from foreign drew him to God. And even though he was all these women worship Ashtoreth, come worship this, and he followed them. Abigail.
So later on, Michael or Michael, whatever, like divorced him or whatever, and then she can't have kids. So what are your thoughts on what would have happened if she had one? Because she was his first wife, but then she couldn't have kids. But Jesus came from David's line.
If he would have had the one, I think God would have sovereignly worked out that relationship, that Jesus would have come from that line, if that's what he would have done. So I think that it would have all been in God's sovereign plan. But God obviously sovereignly worked out Jesus to come the way that he did. So it's a hard thing because God still used his other wives to bring about Jesus. So yeah, it's a weird situation. It's not excusing David's sin of having many wives to say, well, the Savior came from one part of the line of the Savior came from Bathsheba. So what do we do? Rahab was in the line of Jesus. She was a prostitute. What do we do with that? Well, God uses sinful people. And we don't excuse their sin, but God still used these people. So you don't excuse the sin of the people, but God still works out his sovereign plan through people that still had their issues and their sins and their problems. Even David did some wicked things. He was a murderer. You know, he killed Uriah the Hittite to steal his wife. But yet, David is still the one who is given the promise of your line is going to bring about the Messiah, and your kingdom's going to last forever, and God still used him. So we don't excuse the sin of the person, but God will still use that to fulfill his plan. So, yeah, that's a good question. I don't understand why God works it out that way, but he does. Anyway, it doesn't excuse the sin of him having many wives, even though God used that situation. Any other thoughts or questions? Because that's good. If I were God, that's not what I would do. I'd be like, you wicked, wicked man. I could use someone else, but God still chooses to work out his plan through that. So God's mercy and grace, I guess. Yeah. Yeah, it's again, if I was God, I wouldn't do it that way, but that's why I'm not God, because I don't understand anything about God that I need to understand. So anyway, so these were born to David in Hebron. So this is just the start. There's more kids after this. When David moves to Jerusalem, there's more kids. There's actually more wives, I think, after this too. I believe that the count of David's wives goes astronomically high after this. It's not just the 6 wives here. So David does not stop here. And this was a Middle Eastern king type thing. So these are the kings of Israel, maybe also assimilating with what kings around were like also, that a lot of these kings had many wives, and it was them being more like the world instead of like being what God wanted them to be. And that was a problem. So anyway, moving on. We're going to get off David for a while here. 2 Samuel chapter 3, verses 6 through 11. Miriam.
Now it was so, while there was war between the house of Saul and the house of David, that Abner was strengthening his hold on the house of Saul. And Saul had a concubine named Rizapha, the daughter of Ailah. So Ishbosheth said to Abner, "Why have you gone into my father's concubine?" And Abner became very angry.
Is accused and becomes angry. So this is during the time of the war between David and Ishbosheth. It's obviously during Ishbosheth's reign, which we think is the whole time here. And it was saying that Abner was strengthened in the house of Saul. Now, we read at the beginning that the house of Saul was growing weaker and weaker. And this is probably talking about Ishbosheth's reign, that he was growing weaker and weaker. But Abner was growing stronger in the house of Saul. So this could mean a couple of things, but it might mean here that Abner was actually making a play to become king. Now, he was a cousin probably of Saul, so he was of the royal household. And maybe he was actually starting to regret that he set up Ishbosheth as king and seeing him getting weaker and being active as be a better king than Ishbosheth. This wouldn't be unheard of. And we see later on in the kings, especially the kings of Israel, that there's a lot of assassinations, a lot of people taking over as kings of Israel and replacing the kings that are there and setting themselves up as king, that this could possibly happen. And so we see the story that Saul has this concubine whose name was Rizpah, and Ishbosheth makes an accusation to Abner that you went in to my father's concubine. Now, I'm going to ask this question because it's often confused me for a long time, and I think just recently I got a handle on this. What's the difference between a wife and a concubine? Okay, you marry the wife, and
After you have a wife, or then you have another one that you have relationship with, but it's not a wife.
okay, but what is it?
Just a
Okay, it's a little more than that. Okay.
The responsibilities of the wife and the concubine were different. Like the wife had no privileges, so to speak, but the concubine just was there for kids. Like he did.
Okay, I'm gonna put it this way because I think this will really clear it up and help you a lot, and it will make sense of the story here. So, wife, I'm gonna use the word equal. Okay, like the wife and husband become one; they're equal. That makes sense, and that's not the best way to put it, but that's gonna help with this illustration. Okay, so husband and wife become one; they're equal, right? I'm gonna use the word property. So what happens? What would happen for the case we're talking about Saul here? What would happen with Saul's wife when Saul dies? The wife becomes what? The concubine then, if she's property, becomes what?
Someone else's property.
Inheritance. So, in this case, if Abner goes in and takes the concubine, he's taking the guy's property. So he's really saying that, it belongs to you because you inherited it from Saul, but I'm taking it. So really, I'm saying she's mine, so I'm the king now. So if he's making a play to become the king, he's kind of saying, that's no longer yours. I'm the king. She's mine now. She's my property because I'm the king. And so if that's really what's happening here, the king make the accusation, you went to my concubine, he's really saying, you're trying to take my throne, is really the accusation he's making. You're making a play at my throne. And if that's the case, Abner strengthening himself in Israel and then going into the concubine, this is serious here. This is treason. And so this is why Abner reacts very strongly here. It's not just, why did you take my father's concubine? He's saying, why are you trying to steal the throne from me? Now notice, what does Abner not do in this situation here? He does not deny the accusation. Now, I'm going to erase this a second. Does this make sense, by the way? Because it took me a while to figure this out, and actually as I was studying this out, I'm like, oh, okay, this is actually making more sense now. So, if you're being accused now, okay, so I'm going another direction with this now. So, okay, so he's being accused here. So, you're being accused of something. Number one, you can say yes and apologize, right? And that probably Apollo. So he can say, yes, I'm sorry, I did it. My fault. Forgive me, right? He didn't do that. He could say, yes, I did. Deal with it. That kind of idea. He could say, yes, I did it, and then he could kill the king and take over, is basically what I'm saying, right? He didn't do either of those. Third thing he could say is just no and deny it and deal with the consequences. He didn't do that. He went with plan 4 here. And the illustration for plan 4, and I'm going to use maybe a little more modern illustration. Husband comes home, thinks his wife is cheating on him and says, honey, are you cheating on me? And the wife goes, how dare you accuse me of that? I wash your clothes, I cook your... I've slaved over the house for 20 years for you, and how dare you accuse me? Has the wife ever said yes or no? What she's done, she's dropped a guilt trip on him, right? No, that's all. I'm sorry, honey. I shouldn't have said. Is that kind of what Abner does here? He drops the guilt trip on him. And he says, so Ishbosheth accuses him of sexual relations with Saul's concubine, and Abner becomes angry and just, he doesn't deny the accusation. Says, have I gone over Judah, and he uses this phrase here, am I a dog that belongs? And we love dogs nowadays. Dogs are cute. Dogs, oh, I love, what a cute puppy. I'm a dog parent. I'm a dog daddy. I'm a dog. We said back then were disgusting. They were awful. They were the worst insult of all. So what do you call yourself, a dog? The lowest of low that would go over to Judah and be straight. It's the worst insult. He say that over to Judah, even greater to go over to Judah. I've shown loyalty to you. I've shown loyalty to Saul's family. I served Saul faithfully. I didn't deliver you to David. I didn't do any of this. And in return, you dare accuse me? He never denied it. He never said, yes, I did, or no, I didn't. He just drops the guilt trip on him. Himself never does say anything. That don't we do that? We don't deal with the sin. We just throw the guilt. Deal with the situation. We act. And this probably should have been one of my takeaways, but we need to deal with the issue. We shouldn't be deflecting. We shouldn't be throwing it off on somebody else. We shouldn't be throwing out the guilt trips. We need to deal with the issue. If somebody says, did you do this? Is this something we need to deal with? Then we need to say yes or no and deal with it. Right? That makes the situation worse by not dealing with the situation. I mean, yes, I did it. It kills the king. At least he's dealing with the situation. And he's dealing with it wrongly, probably, but he's still dealing with the situation. So anyways, he does this, and then he goes, you know what, I'm going to go over to David, and I'm going to give David all of Israel. I'm going to deliver the kingdom to him. So now he makes this threat and shouts about it. And you accuse me, so I'm going to take my ball and play for the other team. It kind of reminds me a lot of professional athletes. You know. I don't like the situation here. I'm going to go play for, I'm going to be Aaron Rodgers and go play for somebody else. Because you drafted Jordan Love, and I don't like it. No. So, yeah. I don't. I'm a little upset about that still. Whatever. It's real life. So he's going to go play for David now. He's going to go deliver Israel to David. If he is trying to be the king of Israel, this is like totally opposite his goal anyway. But just to spite Ishbosheth, he's going to deliver the kingdom to David. So, and Ishbosheth has no answer because he's weakened already. His kingdom is going the wrong direction anyway. There's nothing he can do. Abner has all the power anyway. Abner's the general of the army. He's in control. Ishbosheth doesn't have an answer. So Abner's accused, and he becomes angry, and he holds all the cards, and Ishbosheth can't do anything. So, he's maybe he thought this was one final play. If I accuse Abner and he's guilty, maybe he'll back off, and so Abner just takes it the other way and threatens him and says, "Fine, you know what? I'm delivering everybody to David. I'm going to take Israel, and I'm going to take Israel and bring him to David, and David's going to become king over all of it. And your time's done." And Ishbosheth can't answer that. He has nothing to say about it. So Abner's accused. He becomes angered, and he makes this threat, and he's actually going to follow through on it. It's not an idle threat here. So let's read on. Verses 12 to 13. Gabriel?
Abner sent messengers on his behalf to David, saying, "Whose is the land?" Saying also, "Make your covenant with me, and indeed by hand shall be with you to bring all Israel to you." And David said, "Good, I will make a covenant with you, but one thing I require of you. You shall not see my face, unless you first bring Michal, Saul's daughter, when you come to see my face."
So, Abner defects to David. So, Abner gestures to David, and the first question he asks is, whose is the land? It's a good question. Whose is the land? Is it Ishbosheth's? Is it Abner's? Is it yours, David? And I think he's who's in control? Who's in charge here? Ask the question. And Abner wants David to come to the conclusion. Abner's kind of running the show right now. He's the one who's been strengthened in Israel, and he's trying to make the point. Hey, I kind of have control up here. I can deliver the land to you. So I want to do it and make a covenant with me. Bring me into your fold. This kind of thing. You rub my back, I'll rub your back. You give me a good position here, I'll bring them all to you. I'll serve you. Just give me that high level general position, and I'll bring them all to you, and they'll serve you. So make that covenant with me, and my hand shall be with you. I'll bring Israel to you. We'll work together. We can do this. We can be a great team. You be the Bill Belichick, and I'll be the Tom Brady, and we'll win some Super Bowls together. We can do it. They did. I mean, it's a good example. Yeah. So he's that's what he wants. Let's work together. We can do it. And David's like, good, yeah, good. That one is that works for me. But I have one condition. I want my wife back. Why would he want his wife back?
Apparently he likes many wives.
Apparently he likes many wives. He has 6. Why does he want another one? For most guys, one wife is enough, right? I mean, come on. Most of us have trouble with one wife. Come on. Why do you want a 7th wife? Why does he want Michal?
It's his first wife.
Okay, so his first wife. Okay, Saul's daughter. Why would that be important? You don't know.
I just know that she's Saul's daughter.
So right to the throne.
What's that?
Right to the throne.
Okay, it could be. It could solidify some rights to the throne because Saul was king, and so in Israel's eyes, okay, you're the son. Now you're back being the son-in-law of the king of Israel, so you kind of have some legitimacy there. Your daughter, the wife of the king, the queen, is in line from that dynasty, so there could be some of that. What else?
He also promised Jonathan to be kind after he was king, and if he doesn't have his wife with him.
Okay. It could be a promise to both Saul and Jonathan, because he promised Saul the same thing too, right? To be kind to his house. So that could be a fulfillment of that, bring Michal back in there, and then he can be benefiting Saul's household and to be promising to Jonathan. What else?
Probably still loves her.
Okay, and not just the romantic love, but remember, Michal and David also had that same kind of love that Jonathan and David had. Remember at first that she loved him like Jonathan loved him. Remember in 1 Samuel talked about that she had that kind of same phileo love, for lack of a better term, that Jonathan and David had. So there was that. Now, as Abigail said, we'll find out later that kind of sours. She despises him after a while. But at first they had that, and David maybe still thinks that's still there and wants that back, and maybe he's still thinking of Jonathan and saying, Michal and I had that same kind of feeling towards each other, and I want her back. And so there's probably a number of reasons why he wants that and is still thinking about that. So that probably all those things combined in there are reasons that he would like Michal back, Saul's daughter. So that he makes that one condition. And Abner, of course, being of the family of Saul and being very important in Israel, he's thinking this is the one guy that maybe has the ability to do that. So let's see what happens, verses 14 through 16.
So David sent messengers to Ishbosheth. I'm not even try. Also, I'm saying, give me my wife, Michal, who I betrothed to myself for 100 foreskins of the Philistines. And Ishbosheth, that word. Hear from her husband. I'm not even trying to pronounce that one either. The son of Laish. Then her husband went along with her through, I don't know that word, weeping behind her. So Abner said to him, go, return, and he returned.
So David's wife is returned to him. So David sent messengers to Ishbosheth. Who do you think one of the messengers was? I think it was probably one of the messengers. I think, or the messengers because that was of Abner. So I think he would have went with messengers at any rate. And the message was, give me my wife back. And he reminds Ishbosheth, I earned the right to marry her. Because there was a deal that was made. I was to bring 100 foreskins from the Philistines to marry her. Remember, what did David do? He did 200, but the deal was for 100. So, David did the over and above thing. Ishbosheth complies. Why does Ishbosheth comply?
Because Abner wants it to happen. If Abner has more power.
Okay. Yeah. Ishbosheth really, this is showing how weak he really is. He doesn't really have any power to deny the request. I think if he really was wielding some power, he'd probably say, I don't think so. This is my kingdom. I call the shots here. He really doesn't really seem to have a whole lot of power here. So he's kind of like, yep, whatever. Go ahead. Oh, Abner. Yeah, you do what you want to. So he took her from her current husband, Patil, son of Laish. Yeah, that guy. And this guy is he's hurting from this. Don't take my wife away. You got her from David. So okay. You stole her from her original husband. Now that she's being stolen from you, now okay, now we feel your pain here. Okay, I get it. So her husband follows after her, weeping. He's hurting. Don't take my wife away. Don't take my wife away. Abner's sick of it. He says, "Go back." And Abner, again, this is the general who's been serving Saul for 20 plus years and has been serving Ishbosheth for, he's fought for 5 years and served Ishbosheth for almost 2 years now. So this is the manly general guy. This is the warrior. This is the soldier. He says, "Go back," probably fully armed, fully armored, and this is the weeping husband. So this guy's probably intimidated at this point, and okay. Yeah, it's okay, Abner's going to kill me. I'm going to leave. So he turns around and goes back. He doesn't argue with this. So David comes back to him, and Abner brings what David, and so he gets in the audience with David now. He fulfills David's requirement. And so Abner gets to come and meet with David. Let's see what Abner does. Verses 17 through 21. Abigail.
Good to Israel and the whole house of Benjamin. So Abner and 20 men with him came to David at Hebron, and David made a feast for Abner and the men who were with him. Then Abner said to David, I will arise and go and gather all Israel to my lord the king, that they may make a covenant with you, and that you may reign over all that your heart desires. So David sent Abner away, and he went in peace.
So Abner brings the elders of Israel to David. He's following through on his threat to Ishbosheth. He gathers and meets with the elders of Israel, and he gives them this speech. You wanted David to be king over you. In times past, this is what you wanted. You wanted David to be king. He's won victories. He's been a great general. He's defeated the Philistines in the past. This is what you wanted. Now's the time. Let's gather together. Let's make David king. This is the time. Let's go for it. So he's giving a great speech. And then he says, the Lord has spoken of David by the hand of my servant David. I will save my people Israel from the hand of the Philistines and the hand of all their... I don't see David as being the most godly man in the world. Saying the right people want to hear. The Lord spoke. This is God's hand in the working. Come on, let's do it. It's time. He knows how to the people and get them to move, right? He probably believes this to some extent, but I don't see him as being this godly man who's being a prophet of the Lord, and he really wants the Lord. He's just hear him.
David is a very godly man, though.
No, Abner. I'm sorry. I misspoke. But Abner, I don't see as being this godly man here. He's just trying to get hearts to do. He's trying to. He's trying to hurt David. So I think that's what he's doing. And so he does this. He talks to people. Now he's going to. Why is he going to Benjamin?
That's the hardest, probably.
That's his home track.
It's his home. It may be the hardest, but he's making a distinct point to go. Okay, these are Saul's people. If I get them, yeah. If I got, it's over. He's really bringing it on here. And then he also takes the message to Hebron. What's so special about Hebron? That's where David's at. So he's going to bring it here, and he's going to bring this message here and make sure that David hears it, because he's thinking about his own position too. David talking about we're going to follow David, and this is here's my position too. David will hear me promoting him. David can't help but to put me in a good position here. So he's working it on all cylinders here. He's going for it. And so all this seemed good to Israel and Benjamin. They're hearing this, liking what they're seeing, that Ishbosheth is failing. They're seeing that he's weak. Seeing what David's doing. Had this 7 years where he's been reigning and he's had peace, fought victories with the Philistines. They know David's reputation, and they're probably thinking, this is what we want. This is what we want for Israel too. We don't want David reigning over us. And Abner saying the right words. Abner receives these representatives, and the representative came. It should be came, not Cain. I think Cain's a mark. Something didn't show up there. So they come to David, and David makes it Israel is that whenever they do anything important, they eat. Important meetings, important decisions, feast. That let's eat, and we'll make it official. So they throw a feast. Okay, I brought these 20 representatives. Go get all of Israel. We're going to come together. Even says this: I'll bring them here, make a covenant with you, and you may reign over all that your heart desires. He's just throwing out thick here. Everything that you desire, David, you can reign over. It's all yours. And I promised that to David, but Abner's willing to him. He's really kind of just he wants to be on David's side all the way here. Abner away in peace. You go. Do it. Go in peace. You need to do. That's great. Now here comes the problem. So let's read 22. It goes up quick. He wants to read today. Okay, let me go ahead.
At the moment, the servants of David and Joab came from Arabia and brought much spoil with David, even for he had sent him away, and he had gone in peace. When Joab and all the troops that were with him had come, they told Abner, king, he sent him away, and he is gone in peace. So came to the king and said, "What have you done? Look, Abner came to you. Why is that you sent him away, and he is already gone? Surely you realize that I'm trying to deceive you. You're going out and you're coming in.
So Joab accuses Abner of spying.
When is it going to talk?
Joab returned. Joab's out doing a job. He's leading the army. He came back from a raid. He's doing what he's supposed to be doing. So he comes in with the army. That's the servants of David and Joab. They were out on a raid. It's just after Abner leaves. And so Joab learns from somebody that Abner was just there and that David sent him away in peace. You know, Joab would have liked to have heard that Abner was there and David killed him. That would have made Joab very happy. But David sent him away in peace. So Joab goes to David. Now, this is fine. Joab is David's general. This is his second in command. Joab would have had a right to go to David. And Joab starts questioning David, what have you done? You know, are you being really foolish here? Why have you done this? Abner's deceiving you. He's tricking you. He's not being sincere. He wants to know your plans. He wants to know you're coming out and you're going in. He's trying to figure out what you're doing so he can use it against you. He's spying on you. He's making it seem like he's your friend, but he's not. He's going to use this against you, David. Now, does Joab believe that this is what's going on?
Probably not.
I don't know if he does or doesn't. But I think if you ask Joab, and he's being honest, I think he's going to say, I don't know and I don't care. Because that's not the point of what he's doing. His point is not that whether Abner's spying or not. His point is he's trying to pit David against Abner. He doesn't care if this story is true or not, if Abner's spying or not. His point is he wants David to mistrust Abner because he would like David to kill Abner. If Abner is spying, great. That's fine with him. If he's not, it doesn't care as long as Abner gets dead, and we'll see that in a second. That's his plan. He doesn't care whether this is true or not, but this is his plan. He wants Abner dead. So I think that it doesn't matter to him whether what he's saying is true or not at this point. And we'll see that his intent is not to protect David from Abner's spying or not. His intent is that Abner is killed. Let's read on, verses 26 to 30. Joanna. Number 8 here, Joab murders Abner. Now, I think there's a piece missing in here that God doesn't give us, because I think that what happened, David's not convinced by Joab's argument that Abner's a spy. I don't think we don't get David's counter argument that, no, I trust Abner, I believe him, I think that he's helping out. I think we're fine. Don't worry about it, Joab. We're good. Because I think Joab's plan happens after that. Because I think really Joab wanted David to do something about Abner, and I think this is Joab's plan B here now. And so Joab goes out from David's presence, and he sends messengers to Abner. And he seems to send messengers to Abner saying, oh, David wants you to come back. Because it says here they sent messengers after Abner, but David did not know about it. Which makes it sound like that it's a messenger to Abner saying David wants you back, but David doesn't know that David was requesting him back, kind of idea. And so he seems to send messages on David's behalf without David's knowledge of it. A little bit deceptive here, right? So Abner returns thinking, okay, David needs me back for something. I better come back, because Abner's trying to please David. He's trying to get on David's good side. He wants to be, he may want Joab's place. He's older, more experienced. He probably thinks he deserves the place. I'm coming over. I'm the top general. I've been serving Saul for years. I got all the military strategy. I'm a better general than Joab. I can lead the army better. Abner's probably pretty full of himself, I think. Anyway, and he may deserve it. He is more experienced, so maybe he does deserve it. But anyway, so Abner returns, and Joab takes him aside, and said he took him aside at the gate, so it's probably obviously before he gets to David, because David didn't know about it. So as he's coming into the city, Joab takes him aside, and Joab stabs him. Interesting enough, where does he stab him? And where did his brother die? In the stomach. So it's I think purposeful. And it says very specifically in this passage, this was in revenge for his brother, right? He killed him very specifically because Abner killed his brother. This was a revenge killing. He murdered him for revenge, right?
Yet his brother was warned. He got no warning.
Yep, and we're going to get to that. Good job. He was warned, and his brother was chasing Abner, trying to kill Abner. So Abner fought in what? Self-defense. And it wasn't war, but he was fighting to defend his life, right? So this happens, and David finds out, because you're eventually going to find this stuff out. So David finds out, and the first thing David does is declares his innocence in this, because he didn't know about this. This is something I didn't know about this. This is not something I wanted. He declares Joab's guilt. This was Joab's plan. This was not mine. And then he pronounces 4 curses on Joab's house, that let it rest on the head of Joab, on his father's house, and let it never fail to be in the house of Joab one who has one of these 4 things. Leprosy. Leprosy is a very bad skin disease. Your skin rots away, parts of your body can fall off, fingers and stuff like that. That's very bad stuff. Physical disability, that's one one who leans on a staff, would be someone who needs something to support themselves because they're unable to support themselves. One who dies by the sword, that'd be someone who dies violently, like in wars, or is killed by some violent means. Or one who lacks bread, someone who's starving to death, someone who needs food. So one of these 4 things in their house, and this is a curse that David pronounces on Joab's house. Now, who is Joab again in relation to David? Yes, and his nephew. So imagine that you feel like you have to do this to someone you're related to. That's hard, but David is like, this guy murdered someone else, and he's my nephew. But yeah, Joab is David's nephew, his sister's son. And you're like, my nephew is a murderer. And he felt like it was the right thing to pronounce this curse on his family for, never fail in the house of Joab for this to happen. So I think that would be very hard to do, but David feels that that's the right thing to do here. And then we see that Abishai, Joab's brother, was involved in this also, that he was involved in this plot, that it wasn't just Joab acting alone here. So they plotted together for this. Okay, one more passage here, verses 31 through 39. Nathan.
Then David said to Joab and to all the people who were with them, "Tear your clothes, gird yourselves with sackcloth, and mourn for Abner." And King David followed the coffin. So they buried Abner in Hebron, and the king lifted up his voice and wept at the grave of Abner, and all the people wept. And the king sang a lament over Abner and said, "Should Abner die as a fool dies? Your hands were not bound, nor your feet put in fetters. As a man falls before wicked men, so you fell." Then all the people wept over him again. And when all the people came to persuade David God do so to me, and more also, if I taste bread or anything else till the sun goes down. Now all the people took note of it, and it pleased them, since whatever the king did pleased all the people. For all the people and all Israel understood that day that it had not been the king's intent to kill Abner, the son of Ner. Then the king said to his servants, "Do you not know that a prince and a great man has fallen to stay in Israel? And I am weak today, though anointed king, and these men, the sons of Zeruiah, are too harsh for me. The Lord shall repay the evildoer according to his wickedness."
So David mourns. And David commands the people to mourn for Abner, including Joab. So they put on the clothes of mourning, the sackcloth. David follows the funeral procession. They bury Abner. David weeps at the grave, and all the people wept with him. And David sang this lament over Abner. And he says a couple things on him that he should not have died as the fool dies. And if you read through Proverbs, there's a lot of stuff in Proverbs about fools dying in various ways, and the fools constantly led to death. And Abner died as a fool dies. It also says that your hands were not bound or feet in fetters, and he's talking here about a criminal. That the person who's bound, the criminals get executed, and he says that Abner died kind of as a criminal died, and he should not have died that way. He fell as a wicked man falls, and again, Proverbs talks about that the wicked will fall into their own traps. And Abner, in a lot of ways, was a wicked man. He wasn't really a righteous man in a lot of ways, and so he kind of did fall as a wicked man, but he fell to, I think, another wicked man, and that happens sometimes. And all the people wept after this again. And then the people urged David to eat. You got to eat. You got to keep up your strength. And David refused. He takes an oath not to eat until the sun goes down, until the sun goes down. Another typo. Got no red line. So the sun goes down. So this pleased the people. And an interesting thing in there, it says everything that the king did pleased the people. David tried to be upright. And I think when you're doing things in the right way, it's going to please people that see that, because they're going to say, well, he's doing the right things. And so they saw that, and they knew that David did not desire Abner's death. And so that's another thing, too. They saw that David wasn't the one plotting to kill Abner, that they knew that David was doing the right things. And so he kind of gives this instruction, this teaching to his servants. He said, do you know that Abner was a great man? Now, again, was Abner always righteous? Obviously not. But he's extolling the good things about Abner. He was a great man. And David says, I'm weak today because of what happened. And it kind of takes his strength away, just the tragedy of what happened. David felt as a human, obviously. And he makes this comment, the sons of Zeruiah are too harsh for me. He struggles with this. Joab's a good general, but the things he does it's too harsh for me to deal with. And then he makes this comment, and it says, God, the Lord shall repay the evildoer according to his wickedness. And it's kind of a thing here. Again, David's not going to take vengeance on Joab for his wickedness. He's trusting the Lord to do that. Now, Joab comes to an untimely death too. Does anybody know how Joab dies? Yes, letter C, a violent death. What happens is when David dies, remember one of David's sons sets himself up to be king, and Bathsheba gets a promise from David that Solomon will be king. So Joab supports the son of David that sets himself up to be king, and Bathsheba goes into David and says, you promised that Solomon's going to be king, so David makes him king. And Joab gets caught supporting the wrong son. And so Solomon, after he sets up his throne and secures his power, basically sets down an execution order for Joab, and Joab runs into the temple and grabs the horns of the altar to try to save himself, and Solomon sends his troops in and has Joab executed in the temple. So,
Wasn't David's dying wish that he do something?
yes,
But
yeah.
He was like, hey, Solomon.
This is kind of the last order to Solomon. Yeah, make sure that Joab dies for his crimes of killing Abner. Yeah, that was his dying wish there. So David doesn't care that he has his son do it for him. So Joab does. His execution is put off, but he does end up dying a violent death. So he doesn't get away with it forever. Takeaways, like I said, the one about Abner that we talked about, I already covered. This is the other one. And I want to talk about this again. These are kind of hard passages because what do you do when most of the passages about people acting the wrong way? And I thought, well, you compare how David dealt with vengeance and how Joab dealt with it. David, when dealing with Saul, who acted wrong, who is actually wronged by Saul, how did he deal with taking vengeance on Saul? Well, he chose to allow God to deal with Saul's actions and leave vengeance in God's hands, right? You know, he had a number of times where he actually could have done something to Saul. He could have killed Saul. And he said, I'm not going to raise my hand against the Lord's anointed. I'm going to let God deal with it. I'm going to do what's right. And that was kind of David's MO. Even, people claimed to have killed Saul. He said, why did you do that? Don't you know that he's the Lord's anointed? You shouldn't have done that. So and that happens a lot with David. He trusts God. Joab, and I have a number of things here. First of all, probably did not have the right to seek vengeance on Abner. Since, first of all, Abner, as Lemuel pointed out, warned Asahel twice. That should be an and then seemed to be acting in self-defense with Asahel. He didn't flat out murder Asahel. He was being pursued by him, so he was only defending himself. And then, as Nathan pointed out, Joab also sought his own vengeance instead of leaving it in God's hands. Joab also deceived Abner by making him think, wow, this is like typo. Yes, I actually wrote this out this morning when I got up, so because I was thinking about this all yesterday and today. Joab deceived Abner by making him think that David was calling him back, so that I'm gonna have to retype this, so that he could actually kill him, and tried to deceive David to think Abner was spying on him instead of trying to help. David would be an example to us for us to follow, and Joab would be an example for us to avoid. So, we're going to be wronged by people. People are going to take advantage of us. People are going to hurt us. People are going to do bad things to us. And, the verse that comes to mind is vengeance is mine, said the Lord, I shall repay. It's not our place to turn around and hurt other people. It's our place to pray for them. It's our place to show mercy to them. It's our place to forgive them. And it's our place to do what's right and to bless them. And we ought to show love and kindness to people. And if there's anything that needs to be done, we put it in God's hands and let God deal with it. God's the judge. God's the righteous one. He will do what's right. And I think that David's examples that we've seen so far, now David at times does wrong things. Obviously, he's human, so he's not going to be a perfect example. But if we look at the two comparison, situation of wrong, then and so that I think we can take from the passage. Don't deflect it, deal with it. If you actually have done something, you admit to it and say, deal if you're with God, make it right with God. Obviously, you have to make it right with God. That's fun. It's true. It's loving and encouraging way possible, and I had to say something hard. I meant it because that. So that we address it, deal with it. It's loving to deal with those issues, because then you can grow from it, you can get it right with each other and those relationships, and then you can grow together and grow closer together. So that's what God wants us to do.
So that's where that came from?
Yeah, now we. It came out by accident. It was just something I said because I didn't know what else to say. Anyway.
Lord, thank you for this opportunity to worship you. Thankful that everyone had a safe trip getting back from their Christmas, spending time with their family. Take what we learned from Pastor Kelly, and hopefully it changes something else. We can do it that if we get angry at someone, we can handle it the right way. And let everyone have a good Sunday. Start the week good. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.